What is going on out there, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot for Watch Along Wrestling. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. Thanks so much for joining us here today. It is officially Survivor Series weekend, and exactly 10 years ago today, on November the 20th, 2011, I was getting ready and getting set to head to Madison Square Garden at this time with my good friend who's on the line with us today. Joe, how are you doing today?
Doing great, man. It's I can't believe it's been 10 years. God.
This wasn't even planned. We had, I had kind of been earlier in the week reminiscing about this week because of the fact that honestly, Survivor Series 2021, the build has been pretty lackluster. They kind of just threw all the matches up on Twitter. So I was remembering past summer Survivor Series, and when I got to Survivor Series 2011, I immediately started thinking about all the fun that we had during that show. But then when I started looking back at it, I asked you, do you have time to do this? Should we try to put this together? And lo and behold, here we are, exactly 10 years to the day.
I actually had like a time hop come up on my phone. And it was photos of Madison Square Garden, like the concourse when you're coming down, and like the merch stand and everything like that. It's so interesting to look at that now during COVID, and it's something I wanted to briefly touch on is like, how, and we could discuss it I guess after, but how COVID has impacted wrestling and like going to these events, and it's just so strange to see like such a packed house, because that was a packed event.
Oh yeah, this is a complete sellout. This is 2011, and for those who have if this is your first time joining the channel here, earlier this year, I've done a similar one of these for the Royal Rumble 2011 in Boston, and then WrestleMania 27 in Atlanta. So this is my third of the big four pay-per-views of the year that I had gone to. 2011, one of my absolute favorite years in pro wrestling. I think that WWE was really on the precipice of becoming a really hot and fun product, really for wrestling fans. Again, for the first time in a really, really long time. I'll get to the show. Joe and I, our first ever show we had gone to the year before this, and boy, like that was one of the worst shows they ever put on. So next year to have it be such a hot product, it felt really cool for the first time. On the heels of CM Punk and the return of The Rock and some of the other bits and pieces that are kind of coming from up within the WWE ranks, it was a really hot product. And this show, yeah, an absolute sellout. Packed to the rafters, and still to this day, the final WWE pay-per-view. They did a network special in 2015, but the final pay-per-view they've ever held at the world's most famous arena in Madison Square Garden.
I completely forgot about that. And it's funny to go from, you brought up the event the year before. It's such a stark contrast between the event we went to then to the event we went to in the following year.
Yeah.
I really did feel like they were maturing as an entertainment kind of platform. And it's one of those things where I remember each match being like more and more excited as the build went on. Again, I know, and I'm sure you're going to bring it up, the whole John Cena, The Rock thing kind of taking over. But it was necessary, I feel like, because they wanted to really cash in on that and bring people in, before WrestleMania, kind of get things moving. So I think diehard fans, they weren't really taken back by that. Like they knew that was kind of it was necessary.
Right.
For like the CM Punk and Zack Ryder, like, you know what I mean, like those kind of matches. So it was unbelievable, though.
Absolutely. So I guess it's, I guess where we could start things off is 2011. Where are you, I guess, in your life? What do you remember most about where you're currently at in 2011?
So, well, you and I were YI.
Yeah.
And it was we both had gone through pretty significant changes in terms of, personal relationships. There was a lot of drastic changes, I would say. And I think we could both agree on that. And we were kind of almost in this own little bubble that was YAI. And I mean, I can't speak for you, but wrestling for me was a healthy outlet.
Yeah.
I was kind of my refuge from kind of the chaos that was going on around me. You know, that's what how I used it. And you know, that was, besides the event the previous year, that was probably my first real large scale wrestling event. And it was kind of overwhelming. I remember kind of being there, and it's it sounds silly now, but it's such a difference to go to an event as opposed to watching it on TV. And that sounds silly because obviously that's, you know, but looking back on it now, that was kind of the thing that stuck out to me. Going to that event was just the scale, like thinking almost behind the scenes, you know, like all of the inner workings that had to take place for this event to happen. You know, every person that had to be involved. It was overwhelming.
Yeah, really. I mean, there were so many big pieces of this event, and I echo your sentiment really in 2011. And I remember you and I think we were good friends. I'd say from about 2008 ish to about 2010, 11. But then I think 2011 we had changed our work schedule and we worked together every single day. We went off site
The
together.
library.
Yeah, at the library. That's right. And I think that I mean, literally for about a year, I'd say we went to the library every day together. You know, had a good amount of that downtime throughout that position because most of the folks that we had worked with were, you know, very high functioning, didn't need too much in terms of supervision or support. So we hang out and we got a chance to really kind of get to know each other and become really close, good, you know, I'd say best friends. And I think one of the things that brought us together was originally watching YouTube videos from time to time. And I know we'd always watch Ray William Johnson from Equals 3, if you remember.
Yes.
From
And
the
that spiraled into, you know, Real Long Island Stories.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, was that, and then yeah, you're right. I think that then started with the Zack Ryder thing, and I think that really kind of exploded our wrestling fandom, because we did go to a show together, as we had mentioned, the Nassau Coliseum, November 1st, 2010. We did not do a retrospective on that because I think it would have been about 2 minutes long.
Just a quick video of me napping.
Yeah, it was. We had gone. The only thing that saved the show for us, I think, we had gone with a coworker who really wasn't even a wrestling fan. He came with us, and this was his first ever show, Mark.
Mark, oh my God.
It was
It was like a kid being introduced to the idea of wrestling for the first time. It was comical.
yeah, but at the same time, his excitement over every single thing that was going on, his taking selfies, it didn't allow us to. And remember, time too, Raw is only 2 hours long, so it wasn't as much of like if you're going through a show that sucks and you're not interested in over 3 hours long, it can really be a drag.
God, I remember that. I remember you calling me when they first announced that Raw was going to be 3 hours, and you were panicking because you knew that this was the end, that this was the end of WWE, because they were trying to cash in on what they felt was the right move. And I'll never forget it. You were like, just put me in charge. I'll take care of it. I know exactly what they need. And 3 hours is not it.
No.
And I got to be honest, man. That to me was kind of a turning point in my fandom, because 3 hours is a lot. And back then, 2 hours, they had to really pack in the big, you know, pop moments because they only had 2 hours to work with.
Right, you're 100% right, and you know, and but that show that we went to in 2010, I think the only thing that's really memorable about that show is that Pee Wee Herman hosted the show.
Oh,
Yeah, it was bad. And the main that show, because I would have never known. You could have put this match on Raw on, you know, SmackDown last night, and I would have thought it was a brand new match. Was the R-Truth and Randy Orton defeating the tag team of David Otunga and Wade Barrett with John Cena as the special guest referee. Horrible.
it was such a disaster. Like it looked as though a child had just picked names out of a hat and said, "This is going to be who's in our match."
Exactly.
That was also during R-Truth's, like, I got to be honest, that was very irritating. His like kind of phase that he went through during that time. And again, they were pushing John Cena so much that
Yeah.
it felt like almost forced, like you had to. And that's why 2011 was such a big year for me and my fandom of WWE, because that was where I feel like my love for CM Punk kind of exploded. Like, I liked him before, don't get me wrong, but this was kind of almost like after he almost went through like an attitude era kind of arc on
Yeah.
his own. And this is where he, as a wrestler, matured, and I could get behind him. And I believe, no, that's not what we had gotten the shirts there, and never before, never again.
Yeah.
I still have it.
Yeah, it's the two of them, Cena and Rock on the show. There's a picture which I'll probably put as the as either the picture here on the thumbnail for the YouTube video, because I still have it on Twitter at the minimum, of the two of us, me wearing a hideous blueberry blue jacket, and you and I both in our Survivor Series Rock and John Cena shirts. Like, we bought the shirts from the stand, immediately took off what we had.
They were like the biggest tools. Like, there was probably like 10-year-old kids rolling their eyes at us, but hey.
Yeah, and tomorrow when I'm at Survivor Series 2021, I'm sure I'll go to the merch stand, I'll get a shirt, I'll run to the restroom, but my wife will be there to tell me, Tom, please, do not wear that shirt. But yeah, it's it was a 2011 for me, it was an exciting time, because once that it turns 2011, I do go to my first WrestleMania. And I remember you were so the great thing about Twitter is that on an advanced search now on Twitter, you can go back on Twitter, and I can go on my personal Twitter at Tommy on the Spot, and go back to 2011 and view all the tweets. And I had done this back when I did my retrospective WrestleMania 27. And there was a time period where you were planning to actually attend the show with me and James in Atlanta, Georgia. Do you have any recollection of this?
I remember. And then what had happened was, oh God, so that was WrestleMania 29?
27.
27. Okay. So my cousin was a freshman in college, and he was like, "Oh, let's go to the show together in Atlanta." This is I don't know if you remember my cousin Brandon. He's a wrestling guy too. We actually ended up watching WrestleMania 30 together.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it was, and the funny thing was, it was in Miami, but we didn't go. We watched it he went to University of Miami, so we ended up watching it at his apartment. But man, like, forget when you get up to WrestleMania 30, I'd love to be on that call. That's a whole nother thing. But that I remember was like, he wanted to do that. He said, I wanted to go to a show, and I forgot why we ended up not going. But you went with James, you said.
Yeah, I went with James, and in the tweets, I was tweeting you, "Hey man, sorry you can't make it. We'll have a beer for you. It really sucks." You were like, "I'm so bummed. Have a great time. Can't believe you're going to WrestleMania." Of course, this would have, we could easily text each other, but of course we're tweeting each other all these things, because that's how you rolled back in 2000. That's how
that's how it was official.
Right, exactly. But yeah, so the in 2011, at this point, beginning of 2011, we start watching Zack Ryder's YouTube show. He's probably about 7 or 8 episodes in, and I shared this story, and Zack Ryder, who's now doing a 10-year retrospective of the True Long Island story every week. He has a podcast. He actually read about this story when I was in a diner with James at the night after WrestleMania at Raw. We had gone in and walk in there, and who's sitting right there but Zack Ryder, Dolph Ziggler, and Nikki Bella. And I about lost it. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, what are we gonna do? Like, this is like completely insane. And it was funny because the year prior, when we were in Atlanta for the Rumble, we had heard about this diner and we didn't go. And then we find out Edge and Dolph Ziggler were at this diner. And so Jane,
diner.
What's that?
What's special about the diner? Is it just a diner that they happen to go to, or?
I guess so. Yeah, I think it was just in town, so they really liked this diner. So James and I had gone in 2010. When I got back to the hotel, I was talking to some random fans who were there, and they're like, "Oh, we just went to the diner up the road, and we saw Edge and Dolph Ziggler." And so now, so James and I are like, all right, we're going to go to WrestleMania next year. And James is like, we're going to stay through Raw because the night after WrestleMania, they have the WrestleMania party. We'll stay through Raw. And then the night after Raw, the night of Raw, we'll go to this diner and maybe there'll be wrestlers there again. Like a year out, he says this. And lo and behold, a year out, we go to this diner right after Raw. And Dolph Ziggler, Zack Ryder, Nikki Bella sitting in a booth. The second walk up, we walk up the stairs, boom, they're right there. And this is like Zack Ryder is quickly becoming our guy. Like we're watching his YouTube channel every day. And I text you, dude, these guys are at a booth in this diner. Should I say anything? And because I wasn't going to. I was like, I was embarrassed. It's awkward. Like, what do you do?
You don't want to look like, I get it.
What's that?
No, I said you don't want to look like a mark. I get
it. And nothing's more, excuse me, guys. I don't mean to interrupt your meal. You mind if I, you know, it's like,
I see your eggs Benedict. Could you please maybe sign my, receipt?
Yeah, exactly. And so I asked you, what do I do? And you said, dude, Zack Ryder's our guy. When are you ever going to get this chance again? You'll never see the guy again. Down a beer and walk over and ask when he's ready to leave if you can get a picture. So I walk over and they're leaving. I down my beer. I walk over. They're leaving. Dolph Ziggler sees me and I'm walking over here. Dolph Ziggler's right here. And I'm like, hey guys, how's it going? And Dolph just cuts me off. Not today, Mark. I am like, well, actually, no offense, but I actually would like to get a picture with Ryder. And he lost. He was so excited. Like because Ryder was his friend. He was so excited about this. And he was like, he starts like laughing hysterically. He's like, dude, yes. Oh my God. And Zack is like, he knows if he stops to take an autograph for me, this is going to turn into a meet and greet. So he tells me like, hey, follow us out. And when you follow us out, we'll get a picture and, just play it cool. And so that's exactly what I did. I got my picture with Zack Ryder. I couldn't have been a nicer guy. In the fun, he actually read this story on Z True Long Island Story. So the idea that he actually now knows about this story is even cooler. But when we took
thumbnail,
what's that?
I said that should be the thumbnail, the photo of you and
Zack Ryder. And so we did. We took the picture, and then afterwards, everyone was feeling so good. Nikki Bella took the photo for us. James came by. He got to say hello, and I was feeling so good. I tested my luck again, and I was like, "Hey, Dolph, you mind now if maybe we get this picture?" And he said, "Absolutely not." It was good times, and so. But yeah, if it wasn't for you, I'd probably never go over to even say hi to Zack Ryder. And that story is one of my favorites from my first ever WrestleMania.
That and for Zack Ryder, he kind of made it easier to transit because again, being friends with you were on this level of fandom that anyone else almost seemed like a poser, And so like I remember coming into this like I was wrestling in the Attitude Era and all that, but then I kind of stopped, and then when you and I became friends, you introduced me to Zack Ryder. I was like, oh, like that's someone I could like. That to me, he seems very realistic. And one of the things that always to this day is his little I guess you call them like just his jokes, like how. The show would start off with him trying to get over a fence, and they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "This is me trying to get over in the WWE." or like he would show his action figure in it, and he was burying it in sand. He was like, "This is the WWE burying Zack Ryder," and every time, it got me, man. And to me, that kind of showed a different side of wrestling, and like. Kind of he seemed more human than some of these other guys, you know what I mean? And that's why I was like so behind him. And Survivor Series for him was huge. So
yeah, I mean it really does, because going into Survivor Series, he starts to build this momentum on YouTube. It goes from like me asking him for a picture and it being a huge deal in Atlanta to all of a sudden now every place he goes, people are getting behind him. He's coming out, he's doing the show. The show's picking up huge steam. John Cena's talking about Z True Long Island Story. Everyone's talking about Z True Long Island Story. And we go and we get there, and it picks up so much steam that he starts to petition to get a U.S. title match with Dolph Ziggler. And they were best friends, of course. Like still to this day, Dolph's one of his good friends. And he is trying to get people to sign a petition online to get him a U.S. title match with Dolph Ziggler. And it becomes like the highest grossing signing that they've ever done at the time. And people he gets thousands and thousands and thousands of signatures. And they're promoting this match on the YouTube channel, even though in WWE, it's not happening. Like nothing is coming from this. And WWE, for whatever reason, even though at this point, they're kind of giving fans what they want. They have CM Punk in the main event scene. Daniel Bryan has the Money in the Bank briefcase. They really are starting to embrace the idea of, hey, people are getting behind these folks that maybe we don't want to push, but let's give them the chance. But for whatever reason with Ryder, they were really pushing back. Like they did not allow this to occur, to the point that at about 10 days out of Survivor Series, they did a thing in the city. And I remember you and I were debating whether or not we should go. Of course, we work together. So if we call out, both of us have to be off. So we can't randomly be sick because people know at this point we're good friends. If we're both awkward. So it was a Tuesday. It was the November the 10th, 2011. And WWE had shut down the city in New York City. And it was right outside of Madison Square Garden. So right outside of Penn Station from 12 to 2. Think about how much WWE thought about Survivor Series then, as opposed to where they think about it now, where you get like no hype at all. 2011, they shut down New York City for a Survivor Series pre-show party where the first 150 fans who got there got to go there and underneath the awning of Madison Square Garden meet CM Punk. There was a band on the top of the awning, Oleander, who is playing some songs. They were doing a live act. And you could have, for the first, I think it was like, of those 150 people, some folks won a bus tour throughout New York City, those double-decker buses, the red bus, to ride around with Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, and Zack Ryder.
Just threw Big O in there.
I mean, literally, that's where WWE viewed Zack Ryder at the time. It's like, here's Zack Ryder. He's petitioning for horrible. Yeah. It's like he's petitioning.
Went on to win the U.S. title belt. Like it's so crazy that it takes that much like focus and energy from the fans to finally have WWE see, like, look, this is a valid, entertainer.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and it really was. I mean, that's where WWE saw him as almost like a mascot as opposed to a valid guy. So going into the show, and do you remember that day where what we did that day before we went to the show? Because you know me, and anyone who watches this channel watches my vlogs knows, you've got to have something that leads up to the show. Because if the show sucks, you could look back and say, hey, at least we did this. Hey, at least there was something after this. Hey, maybe we made it a bigger deal. Do you remember where we ate prior to going into Manhattan?
Wild Wings.
No, Buffalo Wild Wings was in Brooklyn, which we'll get to at the end because tomorrow's show is at Barclays. This is a show. This is a place that was in Bayside before going to Penn Station.
Q Bar?
No, close. Where we'd go all the time. Not as often. It's what one of them.
Not Pizzeria Uno's.
Very close. It's VI Pizza.
Oh, VI Pizza. Oh, okay. Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, and that is an iconic place in Bayside. One of them, probably the best pizza in all of Bayside. And it's one of these things where if you go there, they have a wall of sports heroes. And Kurt Hawkins is a signed Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder picture, since they're both Long Island guys. So that's up on the wall there. But yeah, grabbed a couple slices, and then on our way to Penn Station, Madison Square Garden, that iconic ride as you go in there. What were some of your thoughts? Was this your first ever time at Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, and again, that kind of led to the whole, like, me being, in awe, just going down. And I remember, when you get out of Penn Station and it's so innocuous. Like you kind of come in and you don't realize where you are until you take that final staircase and do that turn, and then all of a sudden it's like right in front of you. And I remember seeing the huge banners, of course, John Cena and The Rock, and I remember going up the elevators to our seats, and all you hear is just you and I couldn't even speak because drowned out by the chants. Oh man, that was like it just even now, man, you get chills. It was crazy.
Yeah, it really it was, and it's something I think that's missing from today's product is the idea that, and folks aren't. The second we walk in there, people are chanting for Zack Ryder. And the reason why is because I think people really believed at the time that if we make noise for this guy, eventually they'll have to listen. And he was a man, he was a guy of the people. He's doing this YouTube channel. He's trying to get himself over. People can see themselves in Zack Ryder to a certain extent. So second you walk into that building, I remember it was just tons of chants, people so excited, amped up for this show. And I think that's what WWE is missing today are the guys you can get behind who maybe if you want to chant for him, that kind of that cult hero, that cult figure that you feel like, hey, if I chant for this guy, if I scream for this guy, maybe he will be somebody who WWE will push. And I feel like they don't have that today, but they certainly did in 2011. And certainly, going into that show, knowing that Zack Ryder was trying to push for this U.S. title match, and then they put random John Morrison in the U.S. title match against Dolph Ziggler, which just like made no sense at all. People were, not to no fault of John Morrison, booing him out of the building because
I felt like that was the end of him too. I mean,
I think he was gone 2 weeks later. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it also deflated a little bit the momentum that Zack Ryder had. Yeah. And it felt very disheartening as a fan to kind of feel like your voice isn't heard. I remember feeling that way. And again, at the time, like I understand, like when they are booking these things, they have to put, again, John Cena and The Rock, like that's a no-brainer, right? It's going to bring in the crowds. It's all ages, I get that, but you have to understand that as a product, it's evolving, and how are you going to get these newer people coming in if you don't change up the brand, Yeah. And I remember in 2011, seeing Zack Ryder's momentum, seeing that even though, CM Punk was kind of overshadowed, I thought his match technically was like on a technical level was incredible. I actually loved Alberto Del Rio. I mean, I know everyone hated him, but I thought that was a great rivalry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to wrap up the thing with Dolph and Zack Ryder, the craziest part is at the end of that match, the crowd's chanting for Ryder so much. I don't know if it was planned, but they do have Ryder go out there, and the place just erupts. And he comes out, and he's like, I mean, the biggest New York star in the history of life. He comes out there, crowd loses their mind, and he lays out Ziggler. Eventually, the next month at like Vengeance, they give Zack Ryder the U.S. title. I still think at that moment they should have called an audible. He should have came out, challenged Ziggler, and you have that moment at MSG at Survivor Series as U.S. title.
And I remember the photo they took of all, and that was like where it was CM Punk, Zack Ryder, Daniel Bryan. Like, oh, dude, that was like one of my favorite photos. I still have it.
Yeah, all the champions at the time.
All the champions at the time, and that was like when all the stars aligned, and you actually like that was probably the most vested I felt in the WWE kind of product. And with the whole like I don't know if you remember, but after the show ended, right? Obviously, cameras go off, but they still have people come out. They're talking about it, and The Rock came out.
Yes,
and The Rock. I mean, The Rock was trying to get probably promote some bullshit that was happening at the time, and he is drowned out by We Want Ryder.
I remember his big thing was, and I had some of that great New York City weed, and he was
and I remember he goes, yeah, you know what, I love that Ryder, woo woo woo.
Because nobody let him get a word in. People are chanting "We Want Ryder" during The Rock's big speech.
And I remember at the time, like sitting there, you and I sitting there and thinking, like, holy crap, like this, yeah.
You and I losing our minds at the library anymore. This is all of us sold out Madison Square Garden on The Rock back match saying, absolutely not. We don't even care. We want Zack Ryder. We don't want you. Exactly.
I remember that. You like literally you and I were trying to talk afterwards. Like you couldn't even speak. Your vocal cords are blown out from screaming Ryder. It was great.
Yeah. I mean, it was insane. You'd mentioned a little bit of CM Punk and Alberto Del Rio. This show is the show where Punk gets the title back after losing it in unceremonious fashion at SummerSlam that year. He does defeat Alberto Del Rio. What did you think about CM Punk at this time? Because he really kind of comes into his own with the pipe bomb, with everything. He becomes kind of that star for the anti-hero, if you will, to the John Cena. And really explodes in 2011.
See that, and you brought up a good point. Like for me, I honestly can't stand John Cena. Like he, and look, everyone, there are people that love him, and that's fine. For me, he represents what I don't like about business, which is the business aspect of it, right? You have to have a shiny penny on the front to make it approachable. And CM Punk for me represented what it was actually about. He was passionate about the actual sport. Like he was very vocal about the fact that he was the best in the world, and it wasn't a question of ego. He truly felt technically that he was the best in the world, and I gotta say, man, I was behind him. And I remember, that was when he first debuted the Anaconda Vice.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, okay, like he's kind of building his arsenal, and once he defeat, and then he went on that run. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that still the longest title run?
So I think they just had Roman Reigns tie him, which is very because it's unfortunate. Yeah, and I think part of it is because Punk's returned and gone to AEW, and I think they wanted to make sure they kind of wiped that out of the record books there, but. The historic at the time that lasted now 10 years, 434-day title reign starts here on this show at MSG, where he beats Alberto Del Rio. And then, as you said, he christens in a new era. And he even had, and God bless him, rest in peace, at the time, Alberto Del Rio has his own personal ring announcer, Ricardo Rodriguez. So CM Punk counteracts that and has his own personal ring announcer, the late great Howard Finkel, come out and declare CM Punk as the new WWE World Champion. And it was awesome. It was a great moment, great match.
And again, I think that going back to your question about since it was my first time in Madison Square Garden, I had never been in a situation where you had thousands upon thousands of people, right, popping like that. Again, you TV, and it's like that's another thing. But being there, I mean, you get lost in it. And I remember being very overwhelmed at that time, it kind of in awe of it all. It was really cool.
And it feels like when you're there for a title change, it feels like you're there for something really important, like something that's going to stand the test of time. So
it's not like the status quo and then it's forgettable.
Right. Also on this show, The Big Show and Mark Henry had a 13-minute encounter that we missed the entire
line there for a second.
Whew. Yeah, it was the
only arc that I liked of Big Show is when he got in trouble for saying "people power." That was the only time I ever liked him. He's brutal.
That match we skipped entirely. We went out to the merch stand, got some chicken tenders to pizza a couple hours before, and was not enough.
Best time. And I remember there being a pop when we were in the bathroom, and we actually got nervous thinking that a new match had started. But lo and behold, actually, it was just that they threw themselves off the ring again.
Yeah. And the crowd, and at the time, the crowd is losing their mind because these are huge, big dudes who are.
Oh my God. I thoroughly enjoyed more the barbecue sauce that my chicken tenders were dipped into than that match.
It was crazy, but little did we know the very next month at Vengeance, this random pay-per-view again, Daniel Bryan would come in, cash in on the two big behemoths, and win the title pretty much out of nowhere. And so that was kind of the beginning of the end there of kind of those big lumbering type of guys. No offense to Mark Henry or Big Show, as I bury them something fierce. Being at the top of the card, which at the time you have CM Punk and Daniel Bryan as your two champions, pretty darn cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that was huge.
And then obviously probably the thing this show is most remembered for, obviously I go to WrestleMania 27 and our friends at Talking Taker, they left a comment echoing the sentiment, which I'll get to at the end of the show. I go to WrestleMania 27. There is a thought that The Rock will never wrestle again. He's just there as the host. And then the next night on Raw, they set up his big return match for WrestleMania 28 against John Cena. For whatever reason, though, at the 25th anniversary of Survivor Series, they bring The Rock back on a whim to team up with John Cena to go against The Miz and R-Truth in the main event of this show. So The Rock's big return match ends up happening right here at this show for Madison Square Garden here at Survivor Series.
I never before, never again. I remember, again, I didn't come there for that. Right. I came there for CM Punk. Zack Ryder. That was why I showed. But the match itself was fine. But I just remember thinking, this is you bring The Rock back, R-Truth, The Miz, and it's so fun to think like they headlined a major pay-per-view. And now looking back at them, or looking at them now, it's like you wouldn't even be able to recognize it.
Against her match. It's the craziest thing. But yeah, I think for me, the biggest, Rock gets in the ring there. And I think the big thing for me was there's this moment when he gets in there where it was like, all right, this is pretty cool. It's like, this is The Rock, who hasn't had a match at this point in 7 years. People thought he was done. Like, he and WWE had a major falling out over the name of The Rock. And it seems like he's just completely has wrestling behind him. And now all of a sudden in 2011, he's back in the mold. He's still under the age of 40, and he's right there in his prime, back in there mixing things up. I think, though, if you look back, this kind of coincides with his entering the Fast and Furious franchise, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. His movie career was really and that's why the following year when he won the title, I mean, he was an absentee title holder. You know what I mean? He showed up once a month, maybe, if that. And I remember thinking, like, when they announced it, I kind of rolled my eyes because I'm like, obviously John's going to win because The Rock is not present.
Right.
So I remember seeing that and I was actually surprised.
Yeah.
And I remember being impressed because I knew that The Rock hadn't been there for years, and his performance in the ring you would have never known. It's riding a bike. He was really, really good. Very, very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, he shakes off the ring rust pretty quickly here. And of course, the one thing everyone wants is at the end of the show, Rock hits the rock bottom on John Cena, lays him out, which is what everyone wanted. I think for me, the biggest thing was I don't want John Cena to come. And I don't want The Rock to come back and team with John Cena. I hope Rock lays Cena out and R-Truth and Miz celebrate a victory as the show goes off the air.
Yeah, and it shows that he just doesn't care. That, to me, actually would have been a better ending. That, right at the end, let's say, Cena hits the AA, he's about to pin R-Truth, Rock comes in, hits him with the rock bottom, R-Truth pins him instead. Like, that would have been great. Oh, my God. Because, it shows that The Rock wasn't there for the win. He could care less.
Right.
And wouldn't have made such a joke because I like The Miz.
Yeah.
R-Truth, not so much, but I felt like for them, that was all the wind out of their sails. They became the Zack Ryders of, they were the joke, right? They were the punching bags for The Rock and Cena. And to me, I was actually hoping that they would win. I remember that.
Yeah, we were rooting for him, especially because, you go from Miz now. He goes from main eventing WrestleMania and winning, becoming one of the only heels to end WrestleMania with the win and the title, to then the next year's WrestleMania being on Team Johnny in the 7-on-7 match between Johnny Ace and Teddy Long. So it's like,
God, what a fall from grace.
It really was. And it was sad. And R-Truth here, unfortunately, this is probably his biggest moment. And 2 days after this, he gets popped for wellness. He's suspended. But he is, when I met R-Truth at an Access, I had told him, hey, R-Truth, I really enjoyed seeing you, against The Rock and John Cena in Survivor Series 2011. He says, people will say what they want to say about that match. He's like, but I main evented Madison Square Garden against The Rock and John Cena. And I was like, you know what? Good for him. A good moment that he got the spot.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think when you're in that that environment, when you're a wrestler for WWE, you will take anything you can get because nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah, no, it's true.
You could be on the bench the next Raw. It doesn't matter. So yeah, no, I give him credit.
And of course, for us here, Joe had mentioned The Rock's post-match interview there, his post-match promo that gets cut off by Zack Ryder and, the fans chanting for Zack Ryder. So it's this great moment. We're feeling great. And, of course, because I'm me, I have now booked us a post-show event, despite the fact that both of us had work the very next day. Do you remember where we went after Survivor Series was over?
It was a comedy place.
Right.
And I remember going there, and it was Mankind. He was kind of the MC. And he's funny. He's a dude. But they brought up someone else. And I remember you and us rolling our eyes. And all we wanted to do was look around to try to find where like Ryder and Ziggler were sitting.
Right.
And they were like up at the top, kind of looking down on everybody. And we were like, oh man, like we can't see them. So we stayed for a minute. But yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, so it was $5 tickets. It was to see, again, Mick Foley was there doing comedy, and the show started at midnight. So we had work the next day. And so midnight rolls around, and they bring out some other jabron to come out and do comedy, and we're starting to get a little nervous because we're aware of the idea that, and the show started late, and we're very much aware of the idea that, like, all right, we have to catch the train, or we're not getting back to Queens. And I remember you had asked me, hey, when's the next train? And I said, something like 1:19. And you were like, when's the one after that? And I said, there isn't any after that till 3:30. And you were like, got to get on that one. It was a situation where Foley comes out. We're watching a couple of his things, but now it's starting to get like, this show's going way past 1:19.
Oh, so, yeah. It was like 1 o'clock, and I'm like, dude, we still got to get,
Madison Square Garden down to Penn Station and onto this train. So we now, it's really awkward because this is a small little venue that Mick Foley's in. It's a $5 venue. It's one of his first comedy shows, and he's doing comedy. And I remember we were like, what are we going to do? We have to leave. Like, we have to get up and go. And so finally we're like, dude, we just have to book it. Like, let's try our best to be as sneaky as we can, and we have to get out of here. And that was when we went to leave, and we ran. And I'll never forget, as we're running, when we got up, we looked right in the skybox seats, and that's when we saw Ryder, Ziggler, I think maybe John Morris, and a couple of the guys from WWE who were there. And Mick Foley said, an embarrassing moment for me, it's all right, fellas, no one notices you. Because obviously huge guys who are like trying to leave the building all sneaky and everything, and it's like we just couldn't. We couldn't do it. And I'll never forget home that checking my Twitter, and my friend, a friend at the time, Matt Binder, had he was at the show with his now wife, I think, and he had tweeted like pictures of the meet and greet, and this is at like 3:30 in the morning. Like, so this thing went on.
So we would have missed the 3:30 train too.
30 train, yeah, and he did, and I was like, I'm a Mick Foley, but come on, like, what are we doing here? So,
it's funny if the event, because we got there early. I mean, we got there early. And I remember thinking, because we had to go back to Bayside, right, to catch the train, to get our cars, to then, for me, because I lived in Rockaway, so you had about a 5-minute drive, I had about a 45-minute drive, and I just remember thinking like, oh, I should have just took the train from there, because then we could have potentially stayed longer. But I remember thinking like, I remember being impressed by your level of dedication, because that's a lot. And mind you, that's not even what you do on a WrestleMania weekend. I remember you telling me the stories of, you go to, Access, then you go to WrestleMania, then you go to the Hall of Fame induction, then I just remember being like, if I'm exhausted by going to a comedy hour after the actual event, like, I can't imagine doing it. So it definitely, it takes a lot of dedication.
It is. It's it's funny because it's funny when you said about the idea of sometimes it can be almost a little overwhelming with my level of fandom when, you're a fan yourself and, you get to work and, hey, did you see Raw last night? Did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? Did you watch the show afterwards that was on the network, the documentary about it? It's like, but I've calmed down at least a little bit. Like, for example, after the Survivor Series show tomorrow night, there is a post-comedy show starring Dolph Ziggler, of all people. And I said to my wife, oh, Dolph Ziggler is doing comedy after Survivor Series. And she said, oh, well, good for him.
I would go to that because Dolph Ziggler to me is funny. And I got to go back and watch some of the Z Draw Out stories. He's so entertaining behind the camera, and I remember always wanting the shirt that he had, the #heel shirt.
Yep.
Like he just embraced it, and I love that about him.
Yeah, and I think, you had mentioned the afterwards, the end of the year here, after Vengeance, there is that iconic photo that Joe mentioned earlier with CM Punk leading the charge, kind of a new wave, it feels like, for WWE. And I think the champions were Dolph Ziggler, CM Punk, Kofi Kingston, who's the last remaining member of there, Evan Bourne, Beth Phoenix, and I want to say Cody Rhodes. And they're all posed. They're all posed. He was the IC champ. And they're all posed together, and it feels like, holy crap, WWE's cool. Like, look at this freaking crop of wrestlers. Not only they're all young, they're all hungry, and they're all like people that you could get behind as being like a cool group.
Yeah.
So ends on a real high note. I feel like for our fandom, which bleeds right into our Christmas of that year. Do you remember the gifts that we'd gotten for each other for that year's Christmas?
So that year's Christmas, we got each other the exact same gifts. Not it goes beyond the WWE merch, but
Yeah.
we got each other wrestling shirts. The CM Punk shirt, which I still have, love that shirt. I had gotten you the #heel shirt, which you had gotten me.
Got it custom. Yeah, because it wasn't available.
Yeah,
You had
they don't sell it because they don't want to acknowledge the idea of a heel.
Yeah.
And I remember you told me that, and I was so disappointed because I'm like, oh, I just want this shirt. Because a lot of the WWE shirts is silly. Usually it's their logo, or it's this to me like represented like, oh man, that was great. And I still have that shirt. And then we got each other Stoli bomb making equipment, which was.
Yeah. You had gotten me like the actual, like, it was like Red Bull and a Stoli orange, and I got you Red Bull, a regular Stoli, and an actual orange. That was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also have a photo of us to the dinner we went to beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah. It was me and my my ex at the time.
Yeah, it was a that event.
and not wrestling related, but do you remember what happened when I realized that Toby had gotten me a gift and I didn't have anything for
him? Wasn't it? He gave you a gift, and you had so Toby gives Joe a gift, and he's probably watching this here now, rolling his eyes. But
Sorry, so
he gets you a gift, and you go, oh crap, Toby, I left your gift in the car, and you ran out there and came back with like a gift card someone had given you. That I think was like,
it was $100 to like 7 different restaurants that none existed in Queens.
But the idea that you felt so bad that you gave him like $100 gift card to somebody who like you didn't even realize you'd be exchanging gifts with. That was the type of thing. I had a Christmas party every year. I'd invite everyone, but no one had any idea who was getting anything for anyone. So you'd have these really awkward moments where someone would go, oh, I got you this gift, Brad. And then Brad would turn around and go, I'm sorry, I didn't, I actually I don't consider you that important of a friend, so I didn't get you anything.
Oh, terrible. I felt so, and then meanwhile, I was doing it just out of sheer panic, right? Because that's all I had. I don't even think it was wrapped. I think I just gave him a card. And the look on his face looked like I just gave him an engagement ring. He was so, like, he felt so bad. And I just remember thinking, dude, just take it. Like, this thing sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, great times. And great to look back on that year. Certainly closing out that 2011 year. Any other? Well, so I guess we should also talk. So tomorrow's show is, as you mentioned, from the pandemic, everything had kind of gone crazy. No wrestling shows for a long period of time, and we had gotten used to here in New York having a show at the Barclays Center every year, 4 straight SummerSlams, followed by a WrestleMania in 2019, and that was really the last time WWE had been over in Barclays Center. That changes tomorrow night for the Survivor Series. Yeah.
Now, have you because again, I know for a while they were still having shows, but there were no fans.
Right.
How do you think that changed the product? Like, do you think it did it at all?
Well, I will say that I personally found the wrestling with no fans to be completely unwatchable. It was one of these things where they were trying their best, they were doing what they could, but I mean, at the time, obviously, we have our daughter in March of 2020. There isn't a damn thing on television during that summer, and I'd find myself, scrolling through Netflix trying to find something to watch rather than just turning on, watching Fuller House rather than rather than giving a chance. And I think that, I know for my wife, and me, I think once you get out of the habit of watching it every single week, it's difficult to pick it back up and to be, you're missing out on 5 hours of wrestling every single week by not watching Raw and SmackDown. We went to, when they
5 hours.
Insane, right? Because you have
I agree with you because, let's say you miss 2 weeks. If you think of it, WWE is episodic in the sense that every episode is connected and there's a storyline. So if you're out 10 hours of a story, you kind of feel disconnected when you come back.
100%, absolutely. And that was, we didn't watch for a while. When fans came back, we did go to SummerSlam in Vegas, which was really cool. And we've since been back we went to MSG for SmackDown, and then went to AEW, which is the rival promotion now in Queens, New York.
Because, and again, not to get too off topic, but AEW, I know that's new. What are your thoughts on that?
It's really cool. It's an alternative, and it's certain. You have so many people there: Daniel Bryan, Rusev, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Chris Jericho. The list goes on and on of former WWE guys who are the folks people really like, who are now all Matt Hardy all over there. So it is really a great. It's a lot of fun. It's completely different. I consider the two things to be completely different. I consider, when I went to Vegas for WrestleMania, SummerSlam, it felt like it was this big, huge entertainment thing that was going on and took over the town of Vegas. Whereas I feel like AEW is a little more niche. I'm sure people are just hating me right now, but I'm sure it's a little more, and it definitely appeals more to your hardcore wrestling fan. Comparatively speaking, if you want to go to the AEW show that was in Queens, you can get a good seat to that show for like $80. If you go to, and I'm talking like floor seat for $80. You go to a WWE Survivor Series, and it's like I'm sitting first section up, and I think the tickets were like $150, $200 each. So WWE is a much more expensive product to go to live. And WWE, I feel like, runs itself like a business. They cut people right and left, tons of releases almost every single week now. So it is nice having an alternative. But again, now you're tacking on another 3 hours a week. There's only so many hours in the week you could dedicate to watching so much wrestling.
I'm curious to see, especially on your YouTube platform, where that goes. Like an episode kind of comparing the two and seeing which one you think is more viable in today's market. It's just interesting.
Yeah, and it is. I think CM Punk said it best when he said, there really aren't any casual wrestling fans anymore. There's not people who are just going to turn it on. I need to see this because, I think when Punk returned and people knew he was coming back, it was like, holy crap. But I think that since then, ratings have sort of stabilized. There's not there's not 3-4 million people watching every week. It's more like 1-2 million people watching every week. So it's like those extra fans just really aren't there. So it's interesting. But, I think, and certainly 2011 me would have been watching every single episode of the show. And, but times change, priorities change. But I'm excited to go to the Barclays Center tomorrow. And of course, we have had one experience where we did go to the Barclays Center a couple of years back. What are your thoughts, I guess, as we close here, of any memories you have of the Barclays Center and going there together that time?
I mean, for me, well, when you say going to the Barclays Center, which pay-per-view?
So we've never gone to a pay-per-view together. We went to
For the Raw.
That was the Raw before WrestleMania 30. So WrestleMania, this is in 2014, probably your last show.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I remember because this was before WrestleMania 30. I remember being really anxious because, again, like I said, I was going to Florida to watch it with my cousin, and the Undertaker and like that whole match was. I was just really nervous for it because I really did feel like, okay, Brock Lesnar, he's too much, and like this was going to be the end of an era. And I remember going into that Raw thinking that, and it kind of, I've never been like that anxious during a Raw, so it was, that was a great one.
Yeah,
it really it set it up, I think, very well.
Well, and I'll never forget too. We had gone to Buffalo Wild Wings because when you go to Barclays Center, there's a Buffalo Wild Wings right across the street. And I always feel like it's integral to go. If you're going to go to a show at Barclays Center, you want to try to get to that Buffalo Wild Wings because everybody who's going to the show is usually at that Buffalo Wild Wings.
Every shirt, I felt like I was at a merch place, like with sheer amount of shirts. There was chants going on. I could sense people working at Buffalo Wild Wings rolling their eyes.
I'll never forget, like in that area, there's also McDonald's. And one time we had gone after the Barclays Center to the McDonald's. There's about 5 million people, all wrestling fans in that place. And everybody is clapping for this, starting all these chants. And eventually the lady at McDonald's was like, just want to let everyone know we've run out of buns. And I was like, you have not run out of buns. You want all these fans as quick as possible. But yeah, I mean, it is a crazy time. We went there. And then, that was the Raw right before, and it was on the Undertaker's birthday. So, because I remember the whole night, every time Undertaker was shown, the crowd was happy birthday. Insane time. But yeah, end of an era. And I'll never forget when the next week Taker streak ends and you send me you called me. I mean, because I was at the show and you called me and you were like, was this supposed to happen? Like, what's going? He's not supposed to lose. Like, what is going on?
Almost, there were theories that he actually had a concussion, and he was supposed to kick out at 2.
Yeah.
But then those were debunked, right?
Well, so he definitely did have a concussion. He was hurt. He went to the hospital, but he was supposed to lose. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I will get to some feedback here because I did ask for your feedback over at Watch Along Tommy. So just to get a couple of pieces here, pull this up. I had told everyone that we'd be recording our 10-year live anniversary, live retrospective of the WWE Survivor Series 2011 today. And here are what some of you guys said at Talking Taker Podcast. I thought Rock honestly looked a little rusty, but it was very cool to see him back there, not really knowing that would ever happen again. They went on to say, I will be honest, though, I was always a little salty because I went to WrestleMania 27 where The Rock was just the host. And then the very next night, they come out and they book Cena and Rock for WrestleMania 28. So I wasn't a huge fan of the comeback because of that. At Steve CJ556, who you may know as half of the Dream Team from my bachelor party, you and him there rocking around the world, drinking all the beverages. At the Epcot showcase said, knowing my general lack of knowledge of the different wrestlers there, I have to say that the Lumberjill match.
Oh, God, the Lumberjill match
seems to have been the one that would appeal to me the most. I'm joking.
I forgot about the Lumberjill match.
Awful. And I mean, good to see that they've come a long way now. The women are now main eventing WrestleMania. Back then, a 4-minute Lumberjill match.
It's crazy to think how insane it was to look at female wrestlers. I mean, Jesus, some of their finisher moves were just them shoving their asses in front of each other's faces. It blows my mind that how far they've come.
And they used to be, I remember when a Divas match would come on, it'd be like, boom, everybody got up and left.
Bathroom break.
Yeah, and if a match really sucked, the cool, like quote unquote sarcastic chant that everyone would do was, "We want divas," because that was the way of saying your match is so bad, we'd prefer to see divas. So crazy. At Brazilian Blue Tea says, it still annoys me the way that R-Truth and Miz were presented as not even remotely a challenge to the dream team of The Rock and Cena. But I guess it served as an angle for WrestleMania. So, I mean, no one was expecting them to win, but they could have at least let them get in some sort of offense, maybe a tease of an upset because The Rock and Cena can't get along, which we had talked about.
I agree completely. I think that's true. Yep.
And then at Enougha.com says Punk versus Alberto Del Rio was awesome. And at Supine Smoky added, and the close to a great trilogy between the two. So thank you so much for your feedback there. Always really nice to see some of that, especially I've given you guys about 24-hour notice. So I do appreciate everyone chiming in and spreading the word about this show here. Certainly leave your comments in the comment section below. I'd love to read them and some of your memories, of a show that I think as we've gone back on, I reflect quite fondly on.
No, absolutely. It's interesting to see that we're not alone in how we felt about some of the matches. So, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, very, very cool. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us here prior to us going on air. And Joe has joined us on our sister channel at Disney 101. You can go back and check out some of the great videos that he's done with us over there. As a matter of fact, I think for a while I referred to you as Marvel Enthusiast Joe, and to which and your friend Mr. James had asked if you were going to be changing your LinkedIn profile and adding the title Marvel Enthusiast under your to your name. But yes, it helped us really, really fun unboxings of some of the Marvel sets that he owns. So make sure you go check those out. I'll put them in the link in the comment section, the description. Any closing thoughts though that you do have here, Joe, before we wrap things up here?
Again, just I think even talking about it now, it's kind of almost like my passion for it. Like I kind of want to go back and watch some of the older. I remember borrowing your WWE Network login, and it's some of the old ones. So I kind of want to go back and rewatch it, man. Like just like that's it's a part of your youth, Like it's great.
Yeah.
No, thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah, no, for me, it's a show that, if we don't go to live, who knows if I even remember it so fondly, but going back and reliving, some of our favorite moments from that year, giving Toby the gift card, getting the old #heel shirts, you get me the 1 out of 1,000, I think it was CM Punk limited release t-shirt, and just so much there. I think it was such a big part of our friendship, and I mean, we've both been in each other's wedding parties, groomsmen in each other's wedding parties. And really, wrestling, I think, kind of ignited that, fuel to the flame of our friendship. And here we are 10 years later, able to reconnect and talk about all the great memories and share a couple of laughs here bright and early on a Saturday morning. So
I think that's a good point. Wrestling it goes beyond just the product. It also kind of represents the ties of friendship. So not to sound too corny, but to me, I think that was kind of the catalyst that kind of grew our friendship. So I'm thankful for that as well.
Absolutely. And we do hope, I've talked about this a number of times. 2012, I feel like I didn't go to too many different wrestling events, but 2013 I did. We're definitely planning a retrospective and a look back at 2013, looking at WrestleMania 29, SummerSlam 2013, Survivor Series 2013. And this was the mark of how I've always said that my friends being wrestling fans, I know it's a mark of a true wrestling fan when they go to shows without me. And in 2013, you did go to a WWE pay-per-view in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania without me to go see Money in the Bank. So we'll have to reconnect about that show and hear your journey there. I'd love to do that in the future.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you again for joining us here today. Is there anywhere anyone can find you if they want to? Do you have social media?
Yeah, at Forever Odd on Twitter.
There you go. Absolutely. Sounds good. So, and it's odd with an O, right? Zero.
Odd with a zero. Yeah.
You can check him out there. Until next time, everybody, make sure you leave a big thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.